In the year 1960, within the pages of DC Comics' The Brave and the Bold issue 28, the Justice League of America was formed. Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, Martian Manhunter, Green Lantern, Aquaman, and The Flash, an all-star cast of DC's greatest heroes, sworn to protect the world from threats both alien and terrestrial. We're not talking about the JLA today, however. Instead, I'd like to talk about the team created by Marvel Publishing a year later as their response to the Justice League's growing popularity. On an outer space adventure, they got hit by cosmic rays, and the four would change forever, in some most fantastic ways.
No need to fear, they're here. Just call the four. Fantastic Four.
Fantastic Four, comprised of the elastic Mr. Fantastic, the self-explanatory Invisible Woman, the hot-headed Human Torch, and a clobberin' stone-skinned brute called the Thing. Since their inception, the four have dabbled into just about every corner of the Marvel Universe, battling alien monsters and terrestrial supercriminals alike, like the villainous monarch Dr. Doom and the Skrull, a race of hostile shape-shifting aliens. While certain elements of the universe have changed with time, the four remain similar to their original incarnations. More than a team, but a family, with all the drama and dysfunction that comes with that. They bicker, they fight, and sometimes Reed might do something stupid, but at the end of it all, they have each other's back. The team has seen various trips to the big and small screen with a number of films and cartoons. In fact, this video began life as a plan to review the video game tie-in for the 2005 live-action film adaptation. That is a hell of a sentence. During my preparation, however, I was made aware of an older, standalone adaptation of the Four's exploits. Today, we're looking at Fantastic Four for the PlayStation 1, developed by Probe Entertainment, published by Acclaim, and released in 1997, just a year before I was released. Neat! From what I could find concerning Probe, the developer was a London-based company founded by Fergus McGovern in Vakis Paraskeva? Apologies if I butchered that. Which specialized in making home ports of arcade games as well as various tie-in games, including Batman and Robin for the PS1, The Incredible Hulk for the Super Nintendo, a game based on The Flash for the Master System, and home ports of Primal Rage, Mortal Kombat 2, and T2 the arcade game. Probe was acquired by Acclaim Entertainment in 95, renamed to Acclaim Studios London in 99, and would go on to develop only 2 games before its closure in April of 2000, Revolt and Armorines Project Swarm for the Nintendo 64. McGovern would go on to found HotGen, which would develop a few console releases, a number of plug-and-play games, and some mobile apps before he passed away in 2016. Rest in peace, Fergus. So, this game isn't very good. When Fantastic Four released, it was received very harshly by critics. I'm talking like 1 out of 10, 1 star, 16 out of 40 by Famitsu harshly. Sure, beat-em-ups had been declared a dead genre at the point that this game came out, but some of these negative reviews are downright nasty. Not only did Next Generation call the game an insult to the medium, but Electronic Games Monthly declared it worst use of good license that year. They didn't even bother reviewing it, they just slapped a dunce cap on it and called it good. I like to consider myself an optimist. I can find something to like in plenty of games, even if they aren't the most technically spectacular products. Let's start this game up and see what...
Mr. Fantastic!
Oh boy. The game opens with a cinematic introducing each member of the Fantastic Four, and honestly, this might be the pinnacle of 3D animation. Between this and Megamind, we may have already peaked and it's all downhill from here. It's not good by any means, but there is a part of me that will always love wonky CG like this, it's great. The Megamind thing wasn't sarcasm though, good movie. My favorite part might actually be this bit with the Thing casually walking through a brick wall before running towards the camera to assault the player. Johnny, what are you doing in there? Come on, the game's starting! By comparison, the main menu is pretty understated. Stylized silhouettes and a gyrating emblem. Not bad, not bad. This is the next screen. Just some options and the Thing staring into your soul. He knows what you're about to play. Is he trying to warn me? Hit start to go to character select, and I'm not surprised to see this game supports 4 players. You'd need a multi-tap, but having the option is really unwelcome, you know? Let's see, do I want to be Mr. Fantastic, Invisible Woman, Human Torch, Thing, or... In 1980, a live-action television series based on The Incredible Hulk was steadily growing in popularity, as was The Bionic Woman, a spin-off to the 1973 series The $6 Million Man. Worried that the show's producers may introduce a female counterpart to the Hulk to cash in on Bionic Woman's rising popularity, Marvel scrambled to beat them to the punch. The Savage She-Hulk #1 hit shelves that year, introducing the world to Jennifer Walters, cousin to the Hulk's civilian identity Bruce Banner, who receives an infusion of his gamma-ray-infused blood and transforms into a jolly green giantess. She possesses a similar strength to the Hulk, though she also retains her original personality, choosing to remain in Hulk form even during her day job as a lawyer. During the events of the Secret Wars, which I won't get into the specifics of for fear of bogging this review down even more with comic book babble, She-Hulk joined the Fantastic Four, so it's actually pretty neat that she's on the roster here. In fact, this could be She-Hulk's first video game appearance, period. Kinda weird they don't advertise her anywhere on the cover, though. Can't compromise space for Reed's chin, I guess. Speaking of the cover, is it weird that the best looking character here is the character who's supposed to be frightening to behold? In the spirit of finding it cool she's been included, I'm deciding to play as She-Hulk in this game about the Fantastic Four. Realistically, I'm trying everyone out, so may as well start with the standout, you know? So, what's the story of Fantastic Four PS1? Pretty straightforward, actually. The villainous Dr. Doom has developed a device which allows him to teleport the Fantastic Four to various locations, pitting them against classic villains until they can finally reach Doom and put a stop to his shenanigans. A cool concept, I think, a sort of grand tour of the Fantastic Four's universe, with appearances from villains like Mole Man, Psycho Man, and Super Skrull. The game plays out across a series of stages, each typically only about 3 levels before ending with a boss fight. Stage 1, Attack of the Mole Men, starts us off in the streets of New York, and wow, that is certainly a look. Characters and enemies are depicted in this weird pre-rendered fashion, and they don't seem to be animated like sprites so much as their limbs stretch and puppet around into the desired poses. There's just something odd about it. It's especially weird when characters turn toward the camera, and I feel it just doesn't match the backgrounds around them a lot of the time. Like there was a lack of communication between the artists designing the levels and the ones designing the characters. The areas look fine, honestly, completely serviceable, though most follow traditional left-to-right gameplay with little variation. The camera will bend around corners to make the level feel less like a straight line, but I won't knock the game for that because linear gameplay is par for the course in beat-em-ups. On the topic of gameplay, it's telling that I can basically see and address every review's problem with the game from the first stage. The gameplay loop of Fantastic Four is the bog standard for a beat-em-up. Move right, punch the enemies that shuffle in, wait for the magic arrow of progress to flash, move right, rinse, repeat. There is one level where you need to throw an enemy through the exit door to progress, and another where you can't walk right and it's all just fighting waves on one platform, but otherwise you're punching dudes and following arrows. I don't have a problem with a fight and progress gameplay loop per se, but the game will typically need to pull other stops to keep it engaging, having neat set pieces like brawling on the train in Final Fight, or having access to weapons and super attacks like Streets of Rage. For a game about superheroes, it feels weird that the combat is so basic. You have 2 attacks, square and triangle, and in my experience it doesn't seem like they have any combos beyond repeatedly tapping one or the other, which launches the enemy away in traditional beat-em-up fashion. I particularly love how She-Hulk's punch cycle is just a series of aggressive bonks. Circle will block, negating damage at the expense of force energy, this green bar beside your health circle. When you're all out of energy, you just can't block. She-Hulk becomes thoroughly incapable of putting her arms up to not take a punch to the face. L1, L2, and R1 are all used to throw enemies, specifically the grunt level enemies of the given stage like these lumpy dudes, towards the screen, away from the screen, and behind you. You can also throw barrels and flip cars, but you don't do that with the throw buttons for some reason. R2 is the super button. No attack is attached to it specifically, but if you hold it and press the right combo of directional inputs like up-down, voila, you flipped a car. These elements basically disappear entirely after Act 1 as well. I think the final act has barrels you can roll. She-Hulk's super moves are incredibly straightforward. Right is a super kick, up is an uppercut, right down is a stomp that deals damage to basically everything on screen, and down up is something I affectionately call the Gamma Drop, or if you're so inclined, the Banana Slamma. Did you notice that only the Gamma Drop takes super energy? I sure did. I think it was meant to be merciful and provide every character with a move that can hurt the more irksome enemies, but giving She-Hulk a free screen clear attack with no cooldown is highly questionable design. 12 guacamole goblins on the screen, 1 stomp, all dead, it's a massacre, She-Hulk is officially a war criminal. I'll admit that I did the monster mash up and down this game, and it rarely stopped being a valid tactic. If a character flies, sure, it doesn't work, but there's only 2 zones with flying enemies in the whole game. For power-ups, it's the usual suspects: health, energy, extra lives, and extra credits. You can configure how many credits you start with, as well as how many lives a credit gives you. I will admit, I actually used a Game Shark code to get infinite credits, but I made a point to tally each individual continue to determine how many quarters this thing would cost me at a real-ass arcade. It seemed like a fair exchange. I'm no god-tier gamer, I'm not afraid to admit how many times I died, and I think that's how I'm going to handle these life-based games from now on. Did I mention that a lot of the music in this game feels like someone is watching a vintage porno in the other room? I enjoy the music, it's got a nice energy that lends to a beat 'em up well, but none of it really screams Fantastic Four to me. The game has very little voice acting, so aside from a few spoken lines by the bosses and the thing going,
It's clobbering time!
whenever he spawns in, you're just listening to the music and the sounds of combat. I don't really mind this, though the thing's penchant for saying his catchphrase every single time is worth it solely for if he gets hit mid-phrase, giving us the iconic phrase,
It's clobbering.
sounds like partway through he became a fucking Banjo-Kazooie character. Back to the actual game. We're making our way through the streets of New York, fighting mole men as we go, and generally doing what superheroes do. It's not a bad intro to the game. The grunt enemies are basic and easy to deal with. The brute enemy you meet later in the level is more of an issue, but it's mostly only annoying because it has a stun and an extended reach that means that if you're close enough to kick it, it's close enough to hit you. Next stage is a construction yard, nothing fancy, but we're fighting more of those brute guys and in groups. Round the corner, however, and we get our first boss fight. It's the monster from the cover of Fantastic Four issue 1, albeit a much lumpier, polygonal, harder to see version. He knocks rocks down, you smack them back at him eventually, he dies. Awesome. I sure hope no other bosses require you to smack objects into them. Heading underground, we meet some brood rock boys. Tanky, but the real annoyance is their ability to shoot rocks. They're not a big deal. Since we're underground, we have to be close to the mole man, right? So we come out the side of a mountain and... and this is a level where you can actually fall off the cliff, which is an instant death. You can throw the enemies off the cliff too, of course, but considering the throwable enemies die to one stomp, it felt like a waste of time to try. So then Satan attacks, and he's not even a boss, he just lasers this one particular spot repeatedly while you fight waves of enemies. I know what I said about set pieces earlier, and this is interesting, but I don't know who this dude is supposed to be. Is this Mephisto? Is this some random devil that the four have fought in their past? You move on soon afterwards, and it's never brought up again. Back underground, and this time we're fighting our way to the Mole Man. He's hanging out on this hovering vehicle, and you need to throw his minions into it to damage it and eventually destroy it, allowing you to fight Mole Man directly. Once he's down, we're off to Subatomic Nightmare, a chapter set in the realm of Subatomica, where Psycho Man is evidently up to no good. Right away, things are different. The levels are a lot more open here, with pits of acid and grunt enemies that roll at you when you approach them. Your super moves don't affect them during the state, by the way, because of course they don't. There's a brute variant that damages you when you hit them directly, but they're only on this stage and no such enemy appears again throughout the entire game. These green brutes can shoot a laser blast at you, and that's fairly annoying, but I'm still more ticked off by the Roly Boys. Psycho Man's facility is a more familiar environment. Nothing too interesting happens here aside from this bendy walkway and this hallway where the perspective is just atrocious. I mean, look at this! One standout, however, is the mid-boss, this tentacled, anus-faced gentleman who you can only damage by throwing Roly Boys into it. This guy might be my least favorite in the whole game because Roly Boys are so annoying about staying still. You need to be right next to them to throw them, but when you're that close, they roll. And the boss's attacks can kill them too, so you're getting the Roly Boy into position, and then the boss just kills them, and you need to try again. Psycho Man has a device that causes you to shrink and makes your controls go wonky. Ignore the big monster, focus on him. The last days on Skrull World. The Planet Eater Galactus is consuming the homeworld of the Skrull, and considering the Fantastic Four never attempt to stop Galactus in this level, they're just cool with that. The Skrull are an odd bunch, and namely because they are both the grunt and brute enemies of the level. At any time, they can suddenly shift into this swole purple form, where they function as a brute enemy or grow wings and begin flying. There are no other enemy types in this act, really, just a bunch of Skrull. As you make your way across these walkways, you really should be able to throw people off. The second stage of the act is a fight with Super Skrull, a Skrull warrior possessing all the powers of the Fantastic Four. After that, just more fighting and walking to the exit as Skrull World is vored by Galactus. Atlantean attack is a short affair, but boy do I not like the first stage. It breaks the move right to progress mold by requiring you to instead weave back and forth across a series of piers. But unfortunately, those piers are crawling with immensely frustrating enemies. Slap-happy squids, Atlanteans with guns, and whatever this... What the fuck is this? Why does it sound like that? The level's incredibly short, but I lost a lot of lives trying to clear it. The second stage is a wave survival on a boat, and the third stage is a fight with Namor the Submariner, who claims that he's not the one making the Atlanteans attack, but rather Atuma, one of Namor's villains. You fight Atuma, and now all seems to be well under the sea. Off-screen, Mr. Fantastic has found a means to transport the team to Doom's home country of Latveria in the Fantasticar, and so we enter the final act. Is the world doomed? This stage is hell in solo play, plain and simple. Tons of enemies with range attacks, flying enemies, giant enemies, and even going for power-ups tends to invite even more Doombots to kick your ass. In true arcade fashion, this final act is designed to milk your credits dry before you can reach Doom. The second stage walks you through Doom's castle, and it has this weird tendency to not communicate that you should be ignoring enemies and pressing forward whenever possible. Typically, if enemies filter in, I assume I need to kill them, but they'll just keep spawning infinitely because the game actually wants you to keep going forward. But I stopped because there are enemies and I thought I had to kill them. But reach the end, throw a Doombot through Doom's face, and now it's time for the final boss. Dr. Doom is annoying, but doable. He's vulnerable when he pulls out his gun, which gets bigger throughout the fight until he's just got a rocket launcher that he's firing point blank into your face. He'll shield infinitely if you attack him at any other time, which is certainly cheap, but he's the final boss in an arcade beat-em-up. They're typically cheap by nature. When he's defeated, the four fly the Fantastic Car into the sunset, and that's it. A winner is you, and my arcade total, consisting of 33 continues, would have cost me $8.25. So, what other content does this game have to offer? Oh, I neglected to mention the special stages, which breaks up the story from time to time to have your hero fight assorted Marvel characters for an extra life. There's only 3 characters, Dragon Man, Iceman, and the Hulk. Honestly, they should have been unlockable characters. It would make this game a lot more replayable. They like to spam their super moves too, so they're most of the way to being player characters already. Was She-Hulk always taller than the Hulk? Jennifer is easily the tallest character in the whole game, and I know she is tall, but she makes the Hulk look like the Todd Howard of the Marvel Universe. There's also this little racing game you can play on the loading screen. It's kinda wonky, but I appreciate it being there. I wish loading screen interactions would make a comeback, they're always so charming. Overall, Fantastic Four's solo experience felt like a typical beat-em-up. I can certainly see why people didn't enjoy it. If you have to have bosses that you throw objects into, I'd have preferred an approach like the monster from the first act. Have the ammunition not move around or attack you, but have grunts in the boss attempt to keep you away from it, because it's frustrating to spend a continue just chasing a minion around to throw him into a boss, only for the boss to kill him at the last second. The difficulty ramps up significantly in the last 2 chapters, the Ultimate Act especially. It feels like you're fighting a 4-player game's worth of enemies all by yourself. Oh, yeah, this game does support 4 players, and in the event of not having any friends, or perhaps being in a situation where you just can't have friends over, whatever reason that might be, totally can relate, the game offers AI teammates that you can toggle from the options menu. So, what's the game like with teammates? Unsurprisingly, it goes from being a decent but occasionally grating challenge to just tedious. Your teammates just smash through enemies as soon as they appear, spamming supers and throws and basically taking care of any threats before you can close in. The game goes from any level of challenging to a battle for relevancy, and eventually I just started stomping in the corner to be doing any damage at all. The game also offers friendly fire, but yeah, no, I don't hate myself that much. Getting thrown around because one of the others respawned is just not fun. I ended up cranking the difficulty to hard and visiting the final act to see how much of a difference your teammates make, and I quickly understood the comments about the game being boringly easy. If you play Fantastic Four with friends, you will barely feel challenged. Between the sheer damage being dished out and splitting the enemy's attention 4 ways, even the Doombots became significantly easier to deal with. As you'd expect, the AI teammates can be a little silly at times, getting stuck on pathways and not realizing that I need to throw the grunts, Johnny, stop killing them, please, I beg you, stop. So in a weird way, it's something of a difficulty tweak to play with AI versus friends, because you're playing with bots that only understand violence. Like I said earlier, my first playthrough was done with She-Hulk, and she plays how I had hoped. She casually approaches her target, hits them like a truck, then keeps on going. Her size and the way she sends grunts flying is pretty dang satisfying. All of her supers feel good, and overall she's my favorite character to play. Also, she's pretty, to me. I can't tell if any character is slower or faster than the others, but I can't help but imagine the Thing is slower than most of the other characters. He hits good, as the only running attack in the game, and his Thunderclap can actually hit flying enemies. I didn't use his other supers much, but he's fine. If you're playing Thing, it's probably for the catchphrase.
It's clobbering.
Playing Invisible Woman is pretty neat. Her supers involve shooting force field bubbles, she has ranged neutral attacks, and she has like a force toboggan when she dashes, that's funny. And her throw involves making a golf club out of force energy. I think they just had fun making her. Human Torch is similar to Sue. He's got a ranged aerial attack, shoots fireballs, has a spammable AoE, and a super that causes fireballs to rain from the sky. Mr. Fantastic feels like he's made of tissue paper. Maybe I'm just bad as him, but I swear he dies so easily. His moves are neat and employ his stretching to form his hands into spike balls, he has a ray gun, can turn into a giant weight and slam down to hit everyone, and he can... Oh god! Overall, Fantastic Four was an interesting discovery, but I think the novelty wears off after the first playthrough. There's certainly more enjoyable Marvel beat-em-ups, but it's nice to see She-Hulk's first playable appearance. If you want a challenge, play solo, and if you want to be bored, play with friends. And if you want to be traumatized, play as Mr. Fantastic. I appreciate the dive into the Fantastic Four that this game sent me on, giving me a newfound interest in the Four, their exploits, and their influence on the Marvel Universe at large. This game just doesn't have anything to offer that would make another playthrough worth the time. Nothing to unlock, nothing to collect. Once you've beaten it, you've beaten it. On my highly sophisticated rating scale, Fantastic Four comes in at a solid, I probably won't play it again. And that's Fantastic Four for the PS1. Do you have anything you'd like me to take a look at next time? A game, movie, anything really? You can leave it in the comments below or take a trip to the Salmon TTV Discord, link in the description. If you'd like to help support the channel, my Patreon can be found in the description as well. Have a happy new year, everyone. I've almost been recording for half an hour, and I'm not even halfway through. And would go on to develop only 2 games before its closure in April of 2000. I held up 1 finger instead of 2, because I cannot count. And they don't seem to be animated like sprites, so much as their limbs stretch and puppet. What's a puppet? The game has very little voice acting, so what's a fight? It's the monster from the It's the monster that made my tongue disappear. But nothing too interesting happens here aside from this bendy wallway. Mega Man, you must stop Dr. Wallway. The last days on Skull World. That's just a typo in my actual thing.
Like that's ever gonna happen.